Ready to dig into something really interesting. Today, we're diving into India's livestock sector. And believe me, it's way more fascinating than you might think.
Oh, absolutely.
We're looking at this report from India's National Institute of Agricultural Extension Management, MANAGE for short. And let me tell you, some of this stuff is pretty eye-opening.
You can say that again. India's a real powerhouse when it comes to livestock, even leading the world in some pretty surprising ways.
The numbers really blew me away. Did you realize India has the biggest livestock population globally?
It's pretty incredible.
And it doesn't stop there. They're #1 for milk production worldwide. And get this, they're #2 in goat population.
Yeah, they're right up there.
And there's even this thing, bristle production.
Yep.
Apparently, India's got a surprisingly high ranking for that. Bristle? I had no clue what that even was before this report.
Okay, so bristle, it's actually a byproduct of the pig industry. It's used in all sorts of things you wouldn't expect. Brushes, brooms, even those fancy artist paintbrushes.
You're kidding. See, I never would have guessed that. So, India's livestock sector, it's full of surprises. But this report isn't just fun facts. It gets into this critical issue. Indian livestock productivity, especially when it comes to ruminants, it's surprisingly low.
Yeah, that's a real concern.
And for anyone who's not a livestock whiz, ruminants, those are the animals with those amazing multi-compartment stomachs, right? Cows, buffalo, sheep, goats, that whole crew.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting, and this is kind of the aha moment for me. Imagine if we could even slightly boost that productivity. I mean, even a small increase could be huge for rural economies, better livelihoods for millions. We could even see improvements in global food security. That's the scale of potential we're talking about.
That's a great point. It's easy to focus on the numbers, but those numbers represent real lives.
Absolutely, real people, real families. And that's where this idea of extension services comes in. They're so important. Think of them like those agricultural consultants who bridge the gap between all the latest scientific research and the farmers, the ones who can actually put that knowledge into practice.
It's like having the latest, greatest smartphone, but you don't know how to use all the features, right?
Exactly. You might be missing out on all the best stuff.
You're right. And this is where it gets kind of frustrating. The report, it highlights how livestock extension in India, it's
Mhm.
constantly underfunded, understaffed.
A constant struggle.
It's like having all the ingredients for this incredible meal, but no one to actually teach you how to cook it.
Mhm.
So huge potential in India's livestock sector, but we've got this knowledge gap holding farmers back from making the most of it. This isn't just an India problem, though, is it?
You got it. This report, it shines a light on a really widespread issue. Connecting research with practical application, making that connection strong, that's a challenge we see across the globe, and it goes way beyond just livestock farming.
So what's the answer? How do we bridge that knowledge gap?
Well, that's where things get really exciting because Manage, they actually offer some really concrete recommendations.
And we're going to dive into those, but first, let's talk about the specific groups that are most affected by this gap. This report really emphasizes the vital role women play in Indian livestock farming.
And it's a big but. Unfortunately, despite their huge contributions, women often face limitations. They don't always have the same access to information, to resources, even to decision-making power compared to men in the industry.
It's like we're saying, hey, you're doing all this incredible work, but we're not going to make it any easier for you, are we?
That's exactly it. And it's really about empowering women to fully contribute, because when they thrive, the whole sector benefits.
Couldn't agree more. And it's not just about supporting women in cattle farming either. This report actually highlights something I hadn't considered much before, the importance of those smaller ruminants, sheep, goats, especially for farmers with more limited resources.
Yeah, those smaller animals often get overlooked, but they're absolutely essential. Especially for families with fewer resources, they can be easier to manage, and they still provide a critical source of both income and nutrition.
It really makes you appreciate the diversity within livestock farming, right? And how crucial it is to think about tailored solutions. What works for one farmer or one type of animal might not be the best fit for everyone.
A one-size-fits-all approach, it just doesn't work.
Makes sense. So let's talk solutions then. What's Manage's take on all this? How do we actually address these challenges? They do lay out some pretty specific recommendations, a whole roadmap for change, actually.
Yeah, they really thought this through. One of the big ones that stands out to me, they actually recommend creating a dedicated extension wing within the government, a team entirely focused on getting all this livestock knowledge into the hands of the farmers who need it most.
That's a pretty interesting idea, like a specialized task force.
Exactly, laser focus. But it's more than just having the team, right? Manage. They emphasize how important it is to really invest in training, empowering these extension workers. They can't just have the technical knowledge, they need to be phenomenal communicators, problem solvers.
So more than just the facts, they need those people skills too.
Oh, exactly. They
Yeah.
need to be able to really connect with farmers, build relationships, understand their unique situations, and they have to be able to communicate all this complex information in a way that's easy to understand and, most importantly, something farmers can actually use. They need to be seen as trusted advisors.
It's that difference between reading a textbook about farming and then actually getting out there in the field, working alongside someone who's got years of experience.
You got it. And of course, we can't forget the gender gap we were talking about. Manage is very clear on this. They advocate for a completely gender-inclusive approach across the entire extension system, making sure women have equal access to everything, training, leadership roles, decision-making, the whole 9 yards.
That's really encouraging to hear. So it sounds like a really comprehensive plan. What else struck you about Manage's recommendations?
One thing that really resonated with me is this emphasis on moving away from that top-down approach to extension. It shouldn't all be coming from the experts on high. They suggest really getting farmers involved in the process, making them active participants instead of just passive receivers of information.
So instead of just telling farmers what they should be doing, it's more about asking, what are your biggest challenges right now? What have you already tried? And what kind of support would actually make the biggest difference for you?
Now you're getting it. This participatory approach, it does two things really well. First, it makes the information way more relevant, more likely to be actually useful to the farmers, but it also gives farmers a sense of ownership. It empowers them to take control of their own livestock management.
A real sense of partnership, of shared learning.
Absolutely. It becomes a two-way street, a genuine exchange of knowledge and experience.
I love that. So much better than a one-sided lecture.
Tell me about it. And this next one, it might seem kind of small, but I think it's really significant. The report, it suggests maybe even changing the name of the State Department of Animal Husbandry to something more like, and I'm paraphrasing here, the Department of Livestock Development, Extension, and Marketing.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Why the name change?
It's subtle, but it represents a huge shift in mindset, don't you think? It goes beyond just managing the animals. It's about actively developing the entire livestock sector, from how things are produced to processing to marketing, the whole process.
It's about recognizing the true potential of livestock to drive economic growth, especially in those rural areas.
Exactly. And speaking of recognizing potential, this report has really got me thinking big picture here. We've talked about a lot of aha moments today, but this last one, this might be the most thought-provoking of all. What if India's experience, what if it could actually offer valuable lessons for how we approach sustainable livestock farming on a global scale?
Now, that is a really interesting question. If we could take some of these recommendations, investing in extension services the right way, empowering women, making farmers true partners in this process, what kind of impact do we have worldwide? It's a big question, but if we could figure it out, what kind of difference could it make? Could we actually move the needle on food security, improve people's lives, maybe even create a more environmentally sound, more sustainable global food system?
Wouldn't that be something? It's that link between research and the real world. That's where the magic happens. If we can make that connection stronger, not just in India, but everywhere, well, who knows what we could achieve.
This report, it's really opened my eyes to just how important extension services really are. Honestly, I didn't fully grasp how crucial they are for making sure that all this knowledge, all this research, it actually translates into real-world change.
I hear you. It's not always the most exciting topic, extension services, but when you really think about it, it's absolutely essential.
And I think what I find so valuable about this report is that it doesn't just point out the problems, it gives us solutions. It's a real call to action, and not just for India, for everyone, really. Anyone who cares about a more sustainable and equitable food future.
Absolutely. And it brings home how interconnected everything is, right? The global food system, it's not just separate pieces. What happens with India's livestock sector, it has the potential to impact everyone, farmers, consumers, even the environment, across the globe.
We're all connected, that's for sure. Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into India's livestock sector, I have to say, I feel hopeful. Like there's real potential for positive change.
Me too. But it also makes you realize we all have a role to play, right?
We do. So for everyone listening, I hope this has inspired you to look a little deeper into the world of livestock, maybe learn something new. And a huge thank you to you for sharing your expertise with us today. It's been a fascinating conversation.
My pleasure. Always happy to talk about this stuff.
Until next time, everyone.